I am considering running for Lindsey Graham's seat.
Joshua Cook from benswan.com. There's reports on that note that the Saudis are funding and also arming the rebels, and there are some reports on the ground from the AP that the rebels could be the ones that are attacking with chemical weapons.
Right.
How plausible are those reports?
You know, actually, I wrote about that on Facebook. Of course, got hammered by the Graham folks saying I'm now a wacko conspiracy theorist. But here's
welcome to America.
I understand. You know, it's just amazing. You know, I volunteered for Afghanistan. Give me a break, guys. But in this case, looking at the evidence myself, here's the first thing I look at as a military guy. You go through planning before you do something like that. What gain do you have? And there's got to be enough of a gain in what you're going to kill with the chemical weapons in order to use the chemical weapons. They're not stupid. They know there's a price to be paid. International community's talked about it. What if Assad did this? If he was responsible for it, he's the most stupid military leader on the face of the earth. Now, he's an ophthalmologist, and he's not stupid. He's well educated, and even though he's ruthless, he'll cut people's whatever off, and he's not stupid. And so when I look at this, I'm thinking something's not right here. Why would they do this in Damascus for somewhat limited casualties? I know, you know, a little over 1,000 sounds like it's really not particularly a lot of civilians killed. To me, it smells fishy. And so my initial response was, we need to look at this closely because there are reports out that the rebels may be the ones that use the weapons. To me, the motivation there would be much more for the rebels. If I'm a rebel commander, I would love the whole world to be on my side against Assad. And that's what Assad is saying. That's what the Russians are saying. And so one thing, too, is this is one of the few times where I wish they could show the Americans the evidence. And we get sick and tired of saying, we got the evidence, it's 100%. We know they use chemicals. Okay, I've looked at the pictures. I know the effects of sarin gas. They use someone used chemicals.
Somebody did.
But what they had a tape of some high-level Syrian official calling down to a lower commander saying, what the heck's going on? Now, what that tells me is that probably Assad or those guys did know, and one of two things happened. Either the rebels used it, that's why he's asked the guy, or some idiot lower commander did something very stupid. And then the question is, do we go to war over that? You know, we need to tie in that Assad made that decision. He called it in, you know, to even go the direction they're going. And so I think it's exactly some big question marks about that whole issue. Yes,
Colonel, I spent a couple of years in Vietnam. When we talk about going to war, there's an old adage there that the amateurs talk about strategy and tactics, and professionals talk about logistics.
yes.
Now, one of the key supporters of Assad and his regime in Syria are the Russians. And you talk a little bit, tell us your experience or your take. If we go in and mess with Syria, what are we going to have to be prepared to be able to do?
Yeah.
And how would that impact our relationship with the Russians and
Sure.
dealing with them on things like keeping our infantry deep or what? What's your take on
No, that's outstanding because, you know, here's something no one talks about. Guess who provided the air defense system? And basically, you know, they're manning the air defense systems in Syria. Guess what happens when an American airplane gets shot down and Americans either taken prisoner or killed, and we know that it's the Soviets shooting them down. We get some serious issues in this, which the rhetoric seems to be, we'll send some cruise missiles, go back home. And I've seen this. First of all, I can make things even worse. Bill Clinton did it with in Afghanistan. After we saw the various attacks, he sent pinprick missile strikes. They already knew they were coming, almost like as a press thing. In this case, if we can send missiles in, we're probably going to send aircraft in too. And the first time an American aircraft gets shot down by a Russian air defense gun, we've got some serious issues. And so the geopolitical, you know, strategic context of what's going on in that, and that's not been talked about. And that's also where, I mean, frankly, it looks like amateur hour sometimes when you look at these groups and thinking, you know, you got 2.5 years ago, you guys had the chance to look at the rebels, and if you'd really done what I believe in, which is understand Muslim Brotherhood enemy, period, then you only support rebel groups that are sort of the anti, you know, the Muslim Brotherhood backed type groups, the Al-Qaeda groups, have attacked the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army has protected Christian villages while they've been slaughtering Christians. We don't even talk about this stuff. The press doesn't talk about this stuff. And the point is that we, as voters, need to be, you know, to understand what's going on, and we need to elect people who don't just reflexively start supporting Al Qaeda to take out Assad. So, good point there about the Russians.
It's my understanding that John Kerry said that the Saudis would help pay for this. I'm wondering why would they have to What
Okay.
advantage would that be? What
Yeah,
is the
okay.
negative side of it?
Actually, good point. And this comes into, again, knowing our allies. And understand something, the Saudis have a lot of money. And Prince Bandar, a lot of folks out there that throw in a lot of money. Some of these guys, I believe, are somewhat pro-American. Okay, I do believe that. But you got about 10,000 princes, if you will, in Saudi Arabia. It's the most duplicitous nation on the face of the earth. The Saudi oil money has gone into the Muslim Brotherhood through a lot of their families, everything else, to help spread the mosques all over Europe, all over America, help fund Al-Qaeda, help fund this, fund that. Here's the issue is that they're Sunni. They're Sunni radicals. They don't like the Shiites, who are considered heretical. They don't like Assad because he's Alawite. He's considered a heretic within the Muslim religion. He's considered almost like Christians are. So that's their interest in all this, is they want a Sunni ruler within Syria. Okay? Now, yes, we don't like Iran. I want to make sure clear about that, because I don't want to see Iran get nuclear weapons. That's a big issue, but somewhat of a separate issue in some ways from what we've got going on in Syria. The fact that Saudis are bankrolling this, to me, makes it almost more worrisome, because they're looking at, again, putting in some kind of Islamist type ruler, a Sunni ruler, who can be there. And frankly, at that point, what happens when they get chemical weapons in Syria? Syria's got a bunch of chemical weapons.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot of chemical weapons. So
I
what?
say they use us, right? They might use us.
Exactly. And then that's also, too, here's again, when you spend too long in D.C., this belief of mine, the Saudis are all over the place, pouring money in campaigns in different ways, taking people out, doing things of this nature. If you're a John McCain, again, respect his prisoner of war status and all that, if you've been there since 1980, you've been there over 3 decades with the Saudis over there, and believe me, they go on these trips. They're not like soldiers going on trips. They see things on the ground. They see the Muslim Brotherhood, like I did in the Sinai. They're wine and dine. They're taking exactly what to be taken. They're shown the things that want to be shown. When John McCain made that trip to go see the rebels, I can guarantee you they showed him exactly what they wanted to see.
Yes.
So he came back and said, oh, they're great. And, you know, Allahu Akbar means thank you, and not, you know, those are the kind of things that he buys into. And the unfortunate thing is, I even see Fox News saying, how can you dispute John McCain? He's the expert in everything. When the French took over after World War I, it was all one country. They broke off Lebanon because they had a Christian majority in Lebanon. And then eventually, they left, and the Assad family took power. Now, here's the thing with Assad, is he and his father were Alawites. They're considered a sort of heretical branch of Islam, if you will. Very important to understand the distinction. It's one of the reasons why they're tied in with the Iranians, because the Iranians are Shiite, which is also, again, a branch from the Sunnis. So there is a tie there. But here's the thing, is that because they were a religious minority, if you talk to most Syrians, they did protect the Christian communities within Syria. So there was some good, though the bad obviously being connected to Hezbollah and connected to Iran. But when the rebellion came, we had a choice to make 2.5 years ago. Who do we support? And again, the knee-jerk response was kind of, rebellions are always good. Just, you know, we need to topple dictators. Well, wait a second. John McCain, Lindsey Graham, who are we supporting? No one gave really thought to that, about the fact that there are many groups right now that are underneath the rebellion. What's really gone on is the current Turkish president, unfortunately, is an Islamist, Erdogan. And he is helping train what's basically Al-Qaeda-based, Islamist-based rebel groups in that part of Turkey to send in. We, unfortunately, because we generally have not found that nuance about Erdogan, have been supporting many of those groups. And in fact, I'm worried, very concerned, those would be the groups that would eventually come in and take power. There is the Free Syrian Army. And actually, from what I'm reading right now, that is a much more secularized, it's being led by a regular Army colonel. It seems to be a force that we could possibly support, but there's a small element within Syria. So here's the issue. The issue was we took a knee-jerk response at the beginning of the rebellion to say we're going to support rebels because there's a dictator in power and we want him out. Not very smart. And so we come to the whole issue of the red lines and everything else. And you know, chemical weapons, believe me, that was my biggest fear over the Middle East. I remember, you know, deploying over one time in '94. We were told Saddam Hussein had 7 minutes on the border, they'd uploaded chemical weapons. I was scared, I'll be quite frank, because you know, I can be shot, at least you die, but you know, sarin gas, that stuff's all bad. Okay, I will not at all. And that does concern me that we now have Assad having used, it looks like. Now, of course, there's question marks as to whether or not it's the rebels. We don't know. And this is where what comes down to where a lot of bad decisions and where guys, I believe, like Lindsey Graham, need to be held to account is why didn't you, just like when it came to Egypt, why didn't you pay attention to what the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamists, the Al-Qaeda were doing and folks you were supporting? Because I see them as the greatest enemy to me, even greater, as bad as Assad is, than Assad, because they really want to destroy us. So now we come down to what do we do? Well, you guys have frankly put us in a position. Obama has for the weakness and indecisiveness and everything else, but frankly, even own Republican leadership in some cases has really made terrible decisions in not understanding the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamists, that influence. So when they ask me, look, we get a chance, and we have a chance now to go to the Free Syrian Army and possibly through covert action do something to arm them. But I will not at all stand behind assisting groups that are Al-Qaeda-based, that are Islamist-based. Their plan is to get in there and set up another Taliban-type government, reestablish a caliphate, bring the Muslim Brotherhood in. I will not stand for that at all. So as we as Americans look at this, it's a tough one they put us into, but quite frankly, at this point right now, we're in a position where we're either supporting Islamists or we're supporting Assad. And we've also done some stupid militarily, which is that I don't care what they say, we've now screwed up any kind of military operation, because you don't stand there and run right to the line, take a knee, tell people you're going in. Because I'm going to tell you, right now, he's putting everything in civilian areas, he's hiding his equipment, it's going to be a very silly operation.
Yeah.
And so, thank you. And the last thing I'd say too on that, as far as the operation goes, is I'm an infantry guy, and I've served on the ground. Air power seems great. What you realize is you can never go into a military operation believing you're only going to have air power.
That's right.
Thank you. If you go back to Kosovo, we had the entire NATO against little old Serbia, little tiny Serbia. We had like 10,000 to 1 against the Serbians. How long did that take? 2.5 months, and we were like, oh boy, where's our ground plan? Because they're not giving in. Well, guess what? If you go in, you better be prepared to get a bloody nose. In this case, if you're not prepared to put troops on the ground, you need to be careful about not going in at all. And this whole thing of pinprick missile strikes, to me, really does not make any sense at all. So with that, that was, I obviously covered a number of areas. I wanted to cover somewhat about what I saw going on in Syria, somewhat what I saw in the Muslim Brotherhood. The big takeaway, I think, is, talking to the Tea Party group, is Lindsey Graham needs to go. And he needs to go for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons, quite frankly, beyond all the immigration issues, the economic issues, everything else is that he didn't do enough to really differentiate the Muslim Brotherhood types, their influence, from those we're supporting. He reflexively supported what he saw as being some idealism in democracy, when really it was not, I believe, in the American interest. And we don't need people to continue doing that in our foreign policy. I am considering running for Lindsey Graham's seat. Right now, because I tell you, people ask the question, I'm looking at everything, and I'm a team player. This whole thing is, we need to get him out, we need to get a true conservative in there. I'm making a lot of phone calls right now. I'm doing a lot of things to make sure that if and when I do announce, it's all set. I did want you to know I'm considering it, and if I do come out and announce, I think you'll understand some of my motivations. I really, as I watch this thing pan out, I've been watching it closely, and obviously, voting for justice like Sotomayor and Kagan really got my frog. That really, and I don't care what your excuse is about election of consequences, you do not vote for Sotomayor and Kagan if you're a pro-lifer, if you believe in marriage, you believe in all these sort of things. Second Amendment, exactly, all that stuff. But that's the first thing, the immigration stuff, watch just the patronizing of saying, now that I've screwed up for 15, 16 years, you, Republican Party, need to demographically change and grant amnesty just because I've screwed it all up. That to me it goes beyond the pale. And we are a nation of immigrants, but we're a nation of laws first.
Yes.
And so I say all that to say that this ties in with this whole idea that for some reason, I respect John McCain's service in Vietnam, but I got to tell you, this constant going overseas and telling America that we need to do this, we need to do that because we're the experts when they're really not, needs to stop.